Do Something Different, a leadership podcast. The irony of executive presence is that the more you try to have executive presence, the more effort you put into it, the less executive presence you actually have. I'm Rusty Gaylord, and this is Do Something Different, a leadership podcast. I'm continuing on this theme of executive presence because it is so important in your career. And what's difficult about executive presence is it's not something that you can claim for yourself. It is something that you earn through your behaviors. And the way you earn it is by being authentic. You have to be truly you. You've got to come across as you. I was coaching a client just earlier today who is by nature very friendly and very easygoing, who smiles a lot. He's in a very senior leadership position in his company, and I suggested to him that maybe his smiling might actually undermine him because he might come across as too friendly, and people see the relationship as more as a friend kind of relationship as opposed to this is someone who is important, they've got a responsibility, they've got authority, they're asking me to do something, and I need to do what it is that they're asking me. I'm not suggesting in this case that he change his personality. But I'm pointing out to him that there is a behavior that he's engaging in that he can adjust and broaden his tool set. If you think about the spectrum from friendly and nice to jerk at the other end of the spectrum, he's way over on the friendly and nice end of the spectrum. And I'm suggesting to him that he expand his usable range. So he doesn't need to go all the way to jerk. Nobody really wants to be a jerk and nobody wants to work for a jerk, but he can expand his usable range so he can be friendly and happy and smile at others. And he can also be very serious when he's saying this is something that we need to get done and it needs to be done by this time and with this quality. This is what the expectations are. I gave him two very simple behavioral things, which I think are important to talk about when we talk about executive presence. Number one is the smiling. Your facial expression, your energy, your willingness to be serious about something conveys a lot. And once again, this is not a show that you're putting on. This has to be something you truly believe in. You have to be willing to say, no, this is it. This is what I believe in. This is what I believe we should be doing. And this is the recommendation I'm making or the decision I'm making. Stand behind it. Be firm. That means you're not smiling, you're not laughing, you're not giggling, you're not doing any of the little nervous behaviors that so many of us have. You have to really believe it and practice it so that it comes through clearly and firmly. So in this case, what I was coaching this person to do is actually to smile less, to have a more serious expression on his face. But the second thing, which is equally important, is to pay attention to your intonation. Every time you speak, there are always fluctuations in the pitch of your voice. When you ask a question, the intonation goes up at the end of the sentence. For example, is this a good time to go to the store? Notice that inflection at the end, store. It's a way that your pitch goes up. Now, some people, when they speak, habitually end their sentence with the pitch going up. If you ever listen to someone that talks like this, you hear a lot of these phrases that tend to go up at the end, and it implies in some way that maybe they're not sure what it is they're talking about. There's a lot of uncertainty that's implied when you talk with these sentences that end upward in inflection. I really think we should do A rather than B. If it were my decision, I would suggest we do X. Those are very simple thing that you can change. Now, it's a habit, and anytime you have a habit, it doesn't necessarily mean it's easy to change, but it's not hard either. It is very much like filler words. If you use a lot of ums, us, I thinks, maybe, a little, all of these qualifier words, all of these words we use to fill in when we don't have something else to say, they also detract from your executive presence. You could come to me and say, Rusty, these are very tactical suggestions, but I would argue if you go and sit in a meeting and you pay attention to someone who's a senior leader and you watch these three things. Number one, facial expression. How much are they smiling and happy? And does this feel like a lighthearted conversation? Or do they seem serious about what they're talking about? Number two, listen to their intonation. Do they tend to go up at the end of a sentence? Or do they go down? When you go down at the end of a sentence, it shows authority. It shows you know what you're talking about, rather than going up at the end of a sentence, which sounds a lot less certain. So that's the second, pay attention to their intonation. And the third thing, pay attention to filler words. Is there a lot of pondering and thinking about a little bit what I want to say before I kind of say it? Or are they very clear about what they want to say and they say it with no filler and no qualifiers like a little or kind of or a bit or I think? Pay attention to those three very simple behaviors. Facial expression, intonation, filler words. Those are behavioral things that you can change that will boost your executive presence. These are squarely in the skill set category because these are skills you can apply. You can record yourself. You can, if you're doing video calls, if you have a recording of the video call, go back and watch it. Listen to yourself and the way you participate in a meeting. Look for those three things. Look for facial expression. How serious are you? Look for intonation, ending sentences with a downward inflection. And pay attention to your filler words. If you draw your attention to these three things, you can start to change them. The purpose is not to change your personality. The purpose is to expand your range of what's possible. You want to be friendly and personable and be able to connect with someone and tell interpersonal stories, but you also want to be able to be serious so that people take what you're saying seriously, they believe you, and they know it's important to deliver on it. That gets conveyed with your facial expression, your intonation, and your lack of filler words. The reason I'm saying that all of this is about authenticity is because if you truly believe in something, you are going to communicate that in much more than just the words that you're saying. The statistics are something like 10% of the impact of what you say is the words, 30% is the vocal quality, the vocal intonation, and 60% is the nonverbal. Now, that may be a little bit different when you're doing this over Zoom or over virtual kind of online kind of interaction. But nonetheless, your energy that you're bringing, your vocal quality, again, the intonation, those matter much more than the words that you say. And executive presence is about conveying that. It's about this qualitative kind of impact that you have on somebody that is not about the words. It's that when you interact with someone who has strong executive presence, you come away feeling that they're confident, you feel safer because of the way they're managing and making decisions. Hopefully you feel seen and considered as a part of that, and yet you feel trust in them because of the way they interact, the way they communicate, and the energy that they bring to the table. That is what executive presence is. It's about you revealing that to the others. I gave you three specific behaviors that you can practice, skill set that you can build. But the mindset piece is about getting clear on what matters to you, what's important to you, bringing your best ideas forward rather than trying to play the political game. I've been talking to people in the last couple of weeks about career moves as well as about executive coaching, because I also do career coaching. And believe it or not, this same principle applies to career moves. A number of the people that I've talked to have come up to a place in their career where they're contemplating a move, but they're uncertain about what to do next. That uncertainty can stem from a few different things. One is uncertainty internally. What if I make the wrong decision? The next move always feels like a big decision. And what if I choose wrong? What if I end up in a company I don't like? What if I make a turn in my career and then find it was a mistake and I went in the wrong direction? What if I feel like I've built a long career and a lot of history and a lot of success in a certain career path, but I'm not sure it's the right one for me anymore? That internal fear about what am I going to do next, and am I confident enough in making that decision? The second thing that tends to impact people is, what are other people going to think? I was just in a conversation earlier with someone who's contemplating leaving a pre-IPO startup that is on the pathway to an IPO. It's very successful. It's one of few companies that's continuing to grow. It's profitable. It does not need any more funding. It's very successful. But this person in particular isn't happy there. He doesn't like the environment. He doesn't like the role. He doesn't particularly get along with his boss, and he's contemplating leaving. We can have a whole separate discussion, which I started with him, about ways that he can be more influential in his role. But one of his biggest fears was, if I were to leave this company, how am I going to explain this to other people? They're going to look at me and say, why would you leave that company? It is pre-IPO. It is doing incredibly well. There must have been something wrong with you for you to leave that company. This is another version of practicing executive presence. Because if he could answer that question seriously, confidently, and clearly and succinctly, without any hesitation, but with confidence about his decision and why he made it and what was right for him, my bet is that the person on the receiving side of that is going to look at him and say, wow, that person has executive presence. Because they're willing to make a decision, they know why they made a decision, they can articulate it cleanly and clearly and with confidence. That does not just happen through these techniques that I shared with you earlier. Yes, they are a part of the story. The other part of the story is your internal belief and your confidence that you need to build. And that comes through knowing yourself. Paying attention to yourself, knowing yourself, having a clear understanding of what's important to you always is one of the most important aspects of leadership. It's self-awareness. Because if you don't know what's important to you, if you don't know what you like and what you don't like, if you're not tuned into your emotions, and if you're not acting on your emotions, you're cutting yourself short. And when I say acting on your emotions, I don't mean flying off the handle, yelling at people. I don't mean that. But I mean, you have to know when you're angry. And you have to understand why you're angry, and you need to be able to address it in a productive way. And that means being effective at addressing conflict and working through things with people. Because if you just ignore the anger, if you sweep it under the rug, if you pretend it's not there, it doesn't go away. And it just manifests and builds and becomes a bigger and bigger problem and ultimately undermines your success as a leader. Once again, what does this have to do with executive presence? It's your willingness to state clearly what it is that matters to you. State your opinion. Do it seriously, do it with proper inflection, without all the filler words, so that the message comes through clearly and powerfully. That is what grows your executive presence. It's got to start inside of you with what matters to you, what's important to you, what your values are, what your decisions are, what your recommendations are. You've got to get clear on that. Do the work. Invest in the self-awareness to get clear on what matters to you. And then comes the technique. That's when the skills come in of communicating that clearly and effectively. And the same thing applies when you're looking for a job. You've got to do the work. Don't go looking for a job out there. Don't go looking at all the postings and scouring who's hiring and what kind of jobs are they hiring. That's fine. You'll get there. Start inside. Start first with yourself about what's important. What kind of jobs do you like? What are your values? What kind of people do you want to work with? What is the culture of the company you want to be in? Answer those questions first, because once you have that alignment, now you can tell the story, and you can tell the story with confidence and with clarity. And when you do, you are exuding and demonstrating executive presence. Whether you're looking for a job, whether you're in a job, executive presence is the key to your future career success. Early on in your career, it's about your technical ability, your ability to deliver work, to get stuff done. As you progress in your career, it's more and more about executive presence. It's about relationships. It's about influence. It's about strategy. These are things that require self-reflection. They require self-awareness. They require you to get clear on what you believe and then to communicate it clearly and succinctly and with confidence so that it comes through with presence. If you're listening to this and any of this feels slightly out of your range at the moment, I encourage you to expand your range. Practice these things. Look at a recording, listen to a recording. I know it's painful. I've done it myself. There's lots of times I avoid it, but listening to yourself can be one of the best ways and fastest ways that you can improve. Be willing to do that. Be willing to do something different, to invest in yourself and grow your career, because these are the things that are going to help you grow your career. Doing that self-reflection to get clear on what's important, what's strategic, what needs your attention, and then communicating that with clarity and confidence and power. You can do these things. It requires a change in how you're working today, but you can do it. So take something from this podcast. Carve out time in your calendar to reflect and think about what's important. Practice speaking with fewer filler words, with more clear and decisive tone of voice, and with facial expressions and energy that convey the seriousness of what it is you're communicating. Listen to yourself. Get some feedback. Get some feedback from others, or just get feedback by listening and watching yourself. Those are 3 simple actions that you can take in order to boost your executive presence this week. Try it and send me a message. Let me know what you did and what worked, and let me know what questions you have, because we can continue to iterate on this, and I'll provide more podcast sessions that address your questions so that you can become more and more effective as a leader. Do something different and have a great week. Thanks for listening to Do Something Different. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share with your friends. You can also find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you want additional content beyond what's on the podcast, make sure to follow me on LinkedIn and at my website, rustygaylord.com.